49 tons of baby formula from overseas is now on the road, headed for those infants who need it most. We'll talk about how Operation Fly Formula is getting off the ground and how soon store shelves near you could get restocked. Plus, new cases of monkeypox. You heard about this now being reported, but it's the conspiracy theories that just might be spreading faster. We've got a context check to sort out what's true and what's not. And the voting is about to go down in Georgia in what political observers see as the revenge races for former President Trump. We're live on the ground with what Republicans and Democrats are up to in these final hours of campaigning. Plus, police looking for a yoga instructor who they believe murdered a professional cyclist who had just gone out with the yogi's boyfriend. The new twist now in what may be a love triangle gone bad. And Bill Cosby back on trial less than a year after he was let out of prison, this time on accusations he sexually assaulted a teenage girl in the 70s. But don't expect to see him in court. We'll tell you why a little later on in the show. Hey, I'm Hallie, and we're coming on the air with some good news tonight for those parents with little kids who really need baby formula, because that formula is now on the ground in Indiana, headed to the people who need it most. And in just another 48 hours, you've got another shipment on the way. We're talking about more than 70,000 pounds of baby formula coming in Sunday on a C-17 from Germany as part of this Operation Fly Formula. Listen, that's enough to feed 9,000 babies, 18,000 toddlers for a week. The vice president saying today parents should know they're working overtime to try to get them what they need. Watch.
I know this is a scary situation for our parents and the caregivers who are taking care of these babies. Our administration is working around the clock to ensure that there is enough safe baby formula available for all who need it, and it is truly one of our highest priorities.
Now, this isn't stuff you're going to go to the store and see on the shelves, though. You're looking at these pallets of formula coming out. This first shipment you can only get via prescription. It's specifically for babies who are allergic to cow's milk. And listen, for some of their parents, they have been in a desperate situation. This is exactly the visual, the piece of video, the image that they have been waiting and hoping to see. Watch.
We only can buy that one brand and one type for her, or she doesn't sleep and she's in excruciating pain. So it's a battle, and it's a terrifying feeling to know that you can't find it.
The Biden administration says they were able to bring this specialty formula in just about 3 days. It typically takes a couple weeks. Megan Fitzgerald knows that. She's joining us live now from Indianapolis, which is the airport where this formula arrived. So it's on the ground, and it is headed to parents in need here. And I think we need to be clear here, Megan. This isn't stuff that's going to get restocked like at your local grocery store or your local, pharmacy here. Right. This is really specialty stuff.
Absolutely, and that's an important distinction to make, because people see this formula coming in and are getting excited. Exciting, sure, because we know that progress is being made, but as you mentioned, this is for babies that can't accept cow's milk. So they need this specialty formula. The president has prioritized this hypoallergenic formula here, and that's what we're seeing coming in. Now, Nestle is the manufacturer of what we've seen. They already have this distribution process set in place well before this all started, which is why when the formula comes in, it goes to their distribution sites, and then they're trying to get it out as quickly as possible. This is FDA approved, but it is important to note that Nestle has their own way of testing to make sure it's up to their quality and standards. So they tell us, as far as that shipment was concerned yesterday that we saw, that some of that shipment has been tested, and those results are expected in the next couple of days. That's when they're going to get this out to places like hospitals and healthcare providers. As you mentioned, it's prescription only. And then in the coming weeks, they said the rest of that shipment will go out across the country. So things are happening. Wheels are in motion, but it is going to take time, Hallie.
And when you talk about wheels in motion, an administration official is just confirming that on Wednesday now you've got another, set of shipments, if you will, of formula coming into Dulles, which is an airport right outside Washington here. It's then going to be driven up to Pennsylvania. But what about parents whose babies don't have a special need for it, right? Like, what about babies whose parents have chosen or who need to use formula that aren't necessarily allergic? The Biden administration has put in place the Defense Production Act. How much longer is it going to take to start seeing those shelves get restocked?
I know that's the question that everybody wants to know. They're seeing formula come in, whether their baby needs that particular kind or not. When can I get this in my hand? And we've asked the administration that. Yesterday, specifically, we talked to the Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack, and they keep on saying that it's going to be a couple of weeks. We tried to nail them down on an exact timeline, but they're saying, look, they're working as quickly as they can to try and make this happen. As you mentioned, the Defense Production Act certainly helping. That means that these manufacturers here in the country will be able to be prioritized. Anything that they need to ramp up production, they'll get it. So if it's paper to wrap around these bottles, for example, to make labels, that's going to get to them. If it's caps to screw on top of these bottles, that's what they're going to get. Obviously, this is an emergency situation. The government says they're doing everything they can to try and stock these shelves and, of course, get these prescription formulas out as well. But again, unfortunately, it's not happening today, but it's something that they hope to see in the coming days and as far as on store shelves in the coming weeks, Hallie.
You know, this comes as the CEO of Abbott apologized in an op-ed in the Washington Post over the weekend. Of course, Abbott was one of the plants that was shut down, was the plant that was shut down over this recall in February that made things worse with this formula shortage. But what we're seeing now is, and we've talked about it a little on the show, what feels like price gouging, right? NBC News has seen cans of formula being sold for way, way more than what you would pay for in the store. New York City actually just declared a state of emergency to, I think, try to help them deal with this kind of price gouging.
Yeah, you know, I mean, Hallie, this is preying on the most vulnerable. I mean, these are moms and dads that are just trying to find formula to be able to feed their babies. And like you said, you know, we're seeing markups of up to 300%, is NBC's reporting. And so, you know, we're seeing these platforms trying to do a little something to take care of this. But this is still a big issue, which is why you see cities like New York City trying to crack down on this. Because, again, you've got the government trying to do everything they can to ramp up production. But in the meantime, the little that is available, it's really a shame, quite frankly, that people are marking it up so high.
Megan Fitzgerald, stand on top of this for us in Indianapolis. Megan, thank you. The CDC and the World Health Organization now both warning they expect to see more cases of monkeypox popping up now that both agencies are working with local health officials to try to track the outbreak. It's coming as the CDC sends a clear monkeypox message in the U.S. They say this is naturally occurring. This is not something that just showed up out of nowhere. Medical experts right now are trying to figure out why monkeypox is showing up outside the countries in Africa where it normally circulates. But they're trying to reassure people that, listen, this situation is containable. And it's a similar message from President Biden today from Tokyo. He says this whole thing is not comparable to what we've experienced with COVID. There's at least 160 confirmed cases of monkeypox across 16 countries, according to one group. And just out of Salt Lake County, Utah, 2 more possible cases being looked at there. Comes as we're hearing reports of some pretty crazy, unproven conspiracy theories about where this virus started. And online, some Chinese social media influencers are trying to pin the blame on the U.S. Ken Delanian joins us now. So, Ken, what's up with this Chinese social media misinformation on monkeypox?
So, Hallie, the Chinese government isn't saying this stuff, but they don't have to because there are armies of people on social media spouting whatever the government wants them to say. And in this case, they're spewing these conspiracy theories about a U.S. role in spreading monkeypox, much like they once accused the U.S. of creating COVID-19 in a lab, Hallie.
Seems to be a trending topic on Weibo, right, which is kind of a popular Chinese social media site. It's almost like similar to Twitter, I guess you could say. Tell me what you're seeing.
Yeah, so Weibo is one of China's biggest social media platforms, and it's heavily censored by the Chinese government. One nationalist influencer who has like 6 million followers on Weibo distorted a 2021 American think tank report on a possible monkeypox pandemic, and he called it a plan by the U.S. to leak bioengineered monkeypox virus. And that post was liked thousands of times. And in general, Weibo hashtags on the U.S. monkeypox outbreak have been viewed tens of millions of times. So it's really resonating.
Explain that and give us the context check here on some of this stuff, Ken.
Well, the context is this is a problem that's much bigger than any one conspiracy theory, Hallie. I mean, social media is rocket fuel for disinformation. And, you know, look, nations have been using propaganda against adversaries forever. But social media and the atomization of our society makes it much easier. You know, for example, in the 80s, the Soviet Union used an elaborate intelligence operation to spread the lie that the AIDS virus escaped from a U.S. bioweapons lab. And, you know, millions of Americans came to believe it. Today, Russia and China are spewing disinformation on a daily basis that is then recycled by American extremists and embraced by large swaths of our country. I mean, last week, Congressman Marjorie Taylor Greene accused Bill Gates of somehow trying to profit from monkeypox. That's obviously false. And even though, you know, the United States invented Hollywood and the advertising industry, we have not been very successful at winning this information war. And in fact, by some measures, we're losing it, Hallie, because more and more Americans are in the grips of these conspiracy theories.
Ken Delanian, thank you for that reporting. Appreciate it. Overseas now, President Biden will meet soon with leaders from Japan, Australia, and India on his last day in Asia after international reaction to something he said about Taiwan, saying the U.S. would defend Taiwan militarily if China were to decide to invade. The White House scrambling to walk this back today, saying, hey, the U.S. policy hasn't changed. That policy, of course, being strategic ambiguity. Taiwan, they welcomed what the president said. China, not so much. They basically told the U.S. to stay out of it. For context, of course, China, you see the map here. There's China, there's Taiwan, this self-governed island you see here. China claims it as part of its territory. Mike Memoli is with us now. Mem, let me start by playing that moment from the president. Here it is.
You didn't want to get involved in the Ukraine conflict militarily for obvious reasons. Are you willing to get involved militarily to defend Taiwan if it comes to that?
Yes.
He then goes on to say, yes, that was the commitment that we made, ma'am. The policy on Taiwan is strategic ambiguity. Those comments from the president were not all that ambiguous.
Yeah, you know what, Hallie? If I didn't know any better, I would think that perhaps President Biden no longer thinks that the policy of strategic ambiguity makes sense anymore. And the reason I say that is, one, Biden likes to say sometimes, you know, no one doubts I mean what I say. Sometimes I say all that I mean. And this is now the third time he's essentially spoken out to say that the U.S. would be prepared to come to the defense of Taiwan should China move aggressively against it. But also, it's very important that you play the context of the president's answer because of the question. But if you broaden it out even further and you look at how Biden got to that point, it starts with a question about Taiwan, and Biden immediately pivots it to the situation in Russia. Now, what do we know about Biden's foreign policy? It's really been grounded in this idea of democracies versus autocracies. And as we were reporting ahead of this trip, Carol Lee and I, Biden has really, and his team have been conducting their response to Russia's aggression against Ukraine very much with China on their mind. They know that China was watching how the West, how the U.S. specifically would respond to Russia as they considered, and they've been more aggressive in moving towards Taiwan. So I think this might be a case of simply the president thinking the policy for decades no longer matches the moment, and he went there. And obviously there is some walk back. This is a conversation we're going to be eager to hear what the president says today, but it's worth following as we see where things end up with the president when he's surely going to get a follow-up question later today.
It's also not the only instance in which we've seen the White House work to walk back something that the president has said on the world stage in a key international moment. I'm thinking about, for example, when he talked about, I think it was March, ma'am, and he said something like, Vladimir Putin cannot remain in power. The White House had to go and say, wait a second, he's not calling for regime change, et cetera. What are you hearing from folks maybe behind the scenes, your sources around the Democratic Party and in the administration about this kind of push-pull, it seems, between what the president says and then what the White House says the president means on these international issues?
Well, Hallie, I think one of the stories to me of the entire Biden presidency is the story of Joe Biden, who wanted to be in this office for his entire career, being frustrated by sometimes the constraints of that office. And these might reflect the fact that there are debates happening behind the scenes within the administration, and he's frustrated by the caution, by the sense that he can't necessarily say what he means or move as aggressively as he might want to. But it all puts into really, I think, stark relief the statement that candidate Joe Biden would make throughout the campaign as he was running against then President Donald Trump. He would really often contrast himself with Trump and say that Trump was too flippant at times, that he was going and saying things without thinking it through. He would say, quite simply, the words of a president matter. They can send a nation to war. They can bring a nation to a peace. And that's the concern of the critics of what the president said today, that perhaps he was being too flippant with an issue that China could respond to very aggressively and would box us in very seriously, given what the president said.
So we know that as the sun is rising in Tokyo, where you are, and the president is starting his day here, he's got these meetings, he's probably going to get asked about, as you say, this issue with China, Taiwan, et cetera, what he meant. What else are we looking for? What else are you watching, Memlik? What's in your notebook?
Well, I think the most important meeting today is the meeting of Prime Minister Modi of India with President Biden. Now, we're going to see all four of the members of the Quad. That's Modi, Biden, as well as the Japanese Prime Minister and the brand new Australian Prime Minister. But as we talk about this summit and this meetings and this trip to Asia being also about Ukraine, Modi has not gone as far as Biden would like in terms of speaking out, especially as it relates to buying Russian oil and taking a harder line against Russia. And so to the extent that Biden is trying to be showcasing the strength of our relationships, these alliances that the United States has, this is one with a very real sticking point. And unfortunately, Hallie, I have to say, the White House has that meeting as closed press meeting. We won't necessarily see their body language at the top. We won't have a chance to put both of the Prime Minister and the President on the record, but certainly something to watch as we move forward into the final day of the President's Asia trip.
Mike, Memoli, thanks for being there. Thanks for covering it. Appreciate it. To Ukraine now. You heard Mem reference that, where today the Ukrainian military is saying fighting has really intensified in the eastern Donbass region. One governor there calling what Russian troops are doing a, quote, scorched earth approach. They've been under 24-hour shelling, basically round the clock, as Russia tries to bring in troops from Kharkiv, from Mariupol, from inside Russia itself. The governor's also saying the only working hospital there only has 3 doctors, and they only have enough supplies left for about another 10 days. It is dire. Comes as the Ukrainian court just sentenced this 21-year-old Russian soldier to life in prison today in the very first war crimes trial of the invasion. He'd pleaded guilty, admitted to shooting an unarmed 62-year-old man in the head in the early days of the war. Some COVID news we've been waiting for now. For parents of kids younger than 5 years old, guess what? It is possible that you are a mere matter of weeks away from getting the COVID vaccine for your children. That's because Pfizer has some data out today saying that 3 doses of its COVID vaccine for kids under 5 were 80% effective against Omicron. They're hoping to submit their findings to the FDA this week. A lot of people say this cannot come soon enough because COVID cases have been going up in kids for the past 5 weeks. The American Academy of Pediatrics reported 93,000 new cases in kids a little more than a week ago. That's up 76% from 2 weeks before that. Meg Terrell is joining us now. So, Meg, feels like this moment has been a long time coming for people who have kids under the age of 5. As full disclosure, I do. It has been a roller coaster ride. Is there a reason to finally feel like a glimmer of hope that there's a light at the end of the tunnel?
Yeah, this time does seem to be different. I hesitate to say that. I also am a mom of a kid under 5, and this has been a really long wait. We've been delayed so many times, but now it is different because Pfizer's study actually met all of the goals of the trial. You mentioned that 80% efficacy. That was against just 10 cases, so it's a very preliminary number. The actual primary goal of the trial was this immune response, and with 3 doses, it did meet the goal in matching the immune response they see in young adults. It also showed to be very safe, very similar to placebo, essentially getting nothing. And so now they have gone ahead. They say they're filing it this week, and the FDA has set a review date tentatively once it gets that application for mid-June.
Can you help us understand the efficacy rate here? 80% with 3 doses for the Omicron variant of COVID. That seems to be pretty good. Moderna has some different numbers. Like, how should we be thinking about the efficacy rates and what we should be looking for, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, this is going to be really important because these 2 vaccines look like they're going to be reviewed literally on the same day. June 15th is the tentative date for both vaccines for kids under 5. Moderna's is 2 doses at 25 micrograms each, given about a month apart. Pfizer's is 3 doses at just 3 micrograms each. The first 2 are about 3 weeks apart, and then the third one is 2 months after that. So that's 3 months to get through the whole Pfizer course. Moderna's efficacy topped out at about 50% for the youngest age group, about 37% for the 2 to 5-year-olds. And so we're going to have to see how regulators look at these 2 different vaccines. And if both get through, you know, are parents going to want to make different considerations? Maybe take the 50% efficacy for a quicker time frame to get fully vaccinated, or do you want that 80%? We also know, unfortunately, protection against symptomatic COVID in the Omicron age does start to wane fairly quickly. So we'll be watching all of this.
Meg Terrell, thank you so much. It's good to have that context. I'm sure I'll be talking to you in the weeks ahead. We're learning this afternoon that the House Ethics Committee is looking into a controversial congressman over a couple of different allegations, including his use of crypto and an improper relationship. We're talking about the guy you see on your screen right there, Congressman Madison Cawthorn. Members of the committee say they voted earlier this month to launch this subcommittee, this investigation, basically, to try to figure out whether he improperly promoted crypto, in which he may have had what they call an undisclosed financial interest. And then they're also looking into whether he engaged in an improper relationship, their words, with somebody who worked for him. Cawthorn's office, just in the last maybe couple hours, responding, saying they welcome the opportunity to prove that the congressman committed no wrongdoing and was falsely accused by partisan adversaries for political gain. Scott Wong joins us now. Okay, so, Scott, let me take this in a couple of buckets. First, what the actual investigation is. Crypto, this improper relationship allegation, an ethics complaint filed by a super PAC that was opposing Cawthorn, who, by the way, just to remind people, we reported last week, he lost his primary re-election push. He's not going to be serving in Congress next year.
That's exactly right. This super PAC, American muckrakers, threw everything at Madison Cawthorn in a bid to defeat him in his GOP primary. And it looks like they did just that. And among some of these allegations in the ethics complaint that they filed with the House Ethics Committee, stated that he improperly promoted a cryptocurrency while he may have, had that cryptocurrency in his investments. So the Ethics Committee said they're going to take a hard look at that. The cryptocurrency is called LGB coin, standing for Let's Go Brandon, the disparaging term, of course, for President Joe Biden. Secondly, the Ethics Committee said they're going to take a look at whether or not Mr. Cawthorn had an improper relationship with a staffer. Specifically, the allegation takes a look at whether or not he was providing free housing to this staffer as well as free travel. Both of those things are against House rules. And so, he will not be in Congress come January, but he still remains a member of Congress. And so the Ethics Committee said they are moving forward with this investigation.
Is there anything else you're hearing from Cawthorn's office, Scott? I mean, we read a piece of their statement. They're basically saying that they feel this is politically motivated, yeah?
That's right. They are denying all of these allegations. They are saying they look forward to, having their day in front of the Ethics Committee where they could convince the Ethics Committee that there was no wrongdoing here. Also, it's important to note in Madison Cawthorn's Instagram post after he was defeated in his primary last week, he posted that, the time for niceties are over, and that this is really the time for quote-unquote dark MAGA, which left a lot of Republicans sort of scratching their head as to what exactly he is referring to when he referred to dark MAGA. But remember, Madison Cawthorn is significant because he remained one of former President Trump's top loyalists on Capitol Hill. He also was one of the election deniers. He did not believe that Joe Biden won the election, and so that is why he's made waves up on Capitol Hill and caused ire among some of his fellow Republicans.
Scott Wong, live for us on the Hill. Scott, good to see you. Thanks for being on the show, bringing that to us.
Thanks so much.
Just a few hours ago, we learned active shooter incidents were up more than 50% in 2021 versus the year before, according to this new report from the FBI. Check out these numbers. In 2021, there was a 52% increase from 2020, with more people dying from these shootings, too. It's also a nearly 100% increase from what we saw in 2017. And for this past year, the FBI also noticed a trend involving what they call roving active shooters. What does that mean? This means people who shoot in multiple locations, either in a day or in a bunch of places over the course of several days. The FBI also emphasized their support of the Don't Name Them campaign, encouraging the public to shift the focus from the people who commit the crimes, the shooters themselves, and instead focus on the victims and the survivors. Coming up, the Southern Baptist Convention being rocked by a new report that says the church covered up sexual abuse for decades. What survivors told investigators in this explosive new report. Plus, the numbers are in Georgia with record early voting numbers. We'll talk about how the former president and vice president are affecting or trying to affect the races there. A stunning new report out today, released by leaders of the Southern Baptist Convention, details a history of sexual abuse and cover-up that's been going on decades. This 7-month-long investigation that was initiated by the church itself and then conducted by an independent firm found top officials in the country's biggest Protestant denomination either ignored or just didn't believe survivors of clergy sex abuse and defied calls for reform to protect their own reputations. The report says survivors share these allegations with the church's executive committee to, quote, only be met time and time again with resistance, stonewalling, even outright hostility for some within the EC. It also suggests leaders lied about whether they could keep a database of offenders when they had secretly been keeping a private list for years. Joining me now is Katie Beck. And Katie, listen, this report has in many ways dropped like a bomb, right? Talk about how the SBC is reacting, what else we're finding out today.
Yeah, absolutely, Hallie. These secrets were kept, according to this report, at the highest levels. These were the people who were overseeing the 14 million members of this church community, and they were the ones who were doing what they could to keep these lawsuits and settlements a secret, and even the allegations to an extent. There were a lot of people deliberately left in the dark, it seems. Now, the president of the SBC has come out and said today that he is grieved at the core by what has happened, and he feels a great regret and sadness for the victims of sexual abuse that have happened at the hands of the church. He is praying that this is a time that will result in some meaningful change and reform, and he is hoping that that is going to be something they can discuss in coming weeks and really try and implement. But yes, this absolutely was a bombshell. This was something that has sort of been percolating since 2018. And it wasn't until they hired this independent firm to do this investigation and get unprecedented access to a lot of confidential stuff, emails and internal communications and all of these lawsuits that have been very closely guarded, were exposed to this firm. So this 288-page report really does shed detailed light on exactly how deep this cover-up went.
I think for some people, when they hear about this investigation, there's a thought back to the 2002 Boston Globe investigation of the Catholic Church and those abuse allegations and how they were covered up. And like the Catholic Church scandal, some of these allegations involve top leaders of the Southern Baptist Convention, right?
Absolutely. It certainly does draw a similarity there, a parallel. Obviously, both of these churches have massive, massive memberships. There are 47,000 churches operating independently under the SBC. So that is a whole lot of congregations that are affected by what is in this report. And yes, it was not your rank and file people in the church denominations. It was the top leaders who were very close to this executive committee. And they say it was actually a small insulated group that was really sort of doing the maneuvering here, even keeping some things from the greater committee as a whole. But the saddest part was that they were belittling and dismantling the victims at the same time, telling them they should be praying about their behavior and be careful, who they tell and that kind of thing, using the power of faith to sort of threaten and intimidate these people that had been victimized. And we're talking about allegations of molestation and rape. These are serious allegations that were brushed under the rug on purpose.
So they're going to make any changes? They've got this annual meeting in California next month. Is reform on the way?
They hope. I mean, the president of the SBC says he hopes that is the primary dialogue they are going to have. They are meeting in Anaheim, California on June 14th. And this is an annual meeting that brings tens of thousands of people to whatever convention center is hosting it. I've actually attended it once before in Dallas in 2018 when these allegations first surfaced. And at that time, it wasn't the center of the debate. It wasn't the center of the conversation. Perhaps this time it will be. But some of the things they're discussing are, restricting these NDAs, restricting these civil settlements so that they can't happen in the dark and people can't kind of be paid to go away. And also coming up with some sort of offender registry, because really another appalling part of this is that while all of these allegations are surfacing, none of the abusers are being removed or being told about to their communities. So some of them were allowed to remain for years operating in ministries and with people, and the people they were serving had no idea that they were actually accused of some pretty serious sexual abuse. So those are some conversations that may or may not be central to this meeting in June. I guess we'll have to wait and see. The president says he's hopeful it will.
Katie Beck, thank you very much. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, stock market starting the week with some gains. Well, that's a nice new sentence to say after what we've seen in the last week or so, right? Look at the Dow up almost 2%. Same for the S&P, which dipped into bear market territory last week. The NASDAQ, which is mostly tech stocks, up big as well. Number 2, Starbucks will leave Russia after 15 years, closing down 130 cafes. It says it'll pay the nearly 2,000 Russian workers employed there for 6 months and then help them transition to some new opportunities. Starbucks, of course, is just one of many companies withdrawing from the country completely because of Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Number 3. Government officials in Beijing are extending work-from-home requirements with COVID cases going up. The city said nearly 100 cases were detected on Sunday, the biggest increase since this month-long outbreak has been going on. In Shanghai, of course, they're trying to break out of their lockdown as COVID cases there start to come down a little bit. Number 4, some Jif peanut butter products were recalled recently over salmonella fears. The CDC says 14 people reported getting sick, 2 of whom were hospitalized. The FDA posted a list online. If you have Jif in your pantry, check the list online, see if what you have is getting recalled too. This is important. Number 5, for the first time in 70 years, Queen Elizabeth will not take the royal salute at the Trooping the Color parade. It's held every year to officially mark the leader's birthday. This year, it'll celebrate her 7 decades in power. The Queen reportedly is having some trouble with her mobility. Prince Charles, Princess Anne, and Prince William will take the salute in her place. Coming up, a New York man heading to Sunday brunch, shot and killed on the subway. What we're learning about the hunt for the shooter. Plus, political advertising like we really haven't seen before as primary season heats up. We'll tell you about the changing landscape next. We started the day thinking Johnny Depp may get back on the witness stand today in that defamation trial against his ex-wife, Amber Heard. Didn't happen. We're going to tell you why in a couple of minutes. But first, elections happening tomorrow in Georgia. Big-time primaries as voters are set to decide on some key races for governor, Senate, and Secretary of State. The latest primary test after Pennsylvania's primaries last week with the GOP Senate race, by the way, still undecided there. But midterm season, of course, means that voters, of course, can have your screens, however you watch, on TV, on your phone, on your computer, whatever. Tons of political advertising. But they may look a little different than the ads you've seen in the past. Maybe they play a little bit more on the cultural divisions in the country. We took a look at the changing landscape of political ads.
Action.
Behind the scenes, a camera and a candidate.
The reality is that so many of us are waiting in the shadows.
The anatomy of a political ad, a campaign staple, even as the ad landscape's changing.
How did you think about your own ads versus the ads you grew up watching?
I never saw anybody who looked like me. I never saw anybody who shared a story that was relatable to me. It felt so distant. I'm running for U.S. Congress here.
That's Victoria Virasing, a Democrat running for Congress in Northern Virginia. And that's Sean McCoy, ad maker.
People need substance. People want change.
Political ads have long been a part of any candidate's election push, and this year's expected to see the most ad spending ever in a midterm cycle, nearly $9 billion.
It's morning again in America.
But these days, we're a long way from the optimism of this Ronald Reagan classic. NBC News has been tracking midterm political messaging for months, and some of it's provocative, from a shootout showdown to cannabis in a lit joint and cannibalism.
One felon released by governors did was Lawrence Anderson. Anderson brutally murdered his neighbor, then tried to feed her organs to his family.
But overall, one theme has emerged. The top boogeyman so far, President Biden.
And that should be no surprise, given that Republicans want to turn these midterm elections into a referendum on the president.
On the GOP side, our NBC News review found a shift over the last decade from a focus on fiscal policy to now so-called culture war issues, like guns and the border.
I'm anti-woke.
Hot-button education topics.
And all of them born racist.
And for some, a focus on lies about the legitimacy of the last election.
Biggest story out there, the rigged election of 2020.
Number 1.
For others, it's about getting your attention fast before you flip or scroll to something else. Dave Carney's been in the political ad business since 1978, and he's seen a lot working with Republicans, including in the White House over 5 decades. In your view, how has the political messaging landscape changed since, let's say, 10 years ago?
It is faster, and it is more diverse, and the ability to communicate a 30-second commercial is really hard.
Carney sees the economy as among the most important issues this year. And sure enough, NBC News has found inflation mentioned the most of any topic so far this year, in 10% of all ads we tracked in April on both sides of the aisle. But for Democrats, our review shows in just the past month an increasing focus on something else, too, abortion rights. With the Supreme Court just weeks away from potentially overturning the landmark Roe v. Wade ruling protecting abortion access.
Waiting for the protection of reproductive rights.
Vera Singh is highlighting reproductive rights in her new ad. But beyond that, she hopes being real and really authentic makes the biggest difference.
We're rewriting the Democratic messaging playbook, and I hope that people are listening and watching.
Of course, if you live in Georgia, which is a key primary midterm state, you are probably seeing a ton of ads. In less than 24 hours, we are in the final hours of campaigning now. And actually less than that, right? Maybe 12 plus hours from now, voters are going to head to the polls for a Republican governor's race that may be the biggest test and the biggest blow to a Donald Trump endorsement so far. The former president's own vice president, Mike Pence, laying the groundwork to split from his former boss, campaigning tonight for current Governor Brian Kemp, not the guy that Donald Trump backed, just former Senator David Perdue. This is an election that's already seen a record number of early votes, more than 850,000. That's up 168% from 2018. Look at these numbers. The one in green there, up 212% from 2020. In other words, a ton of people came out to early vote. Let's talk about some of the polling. It suggests the current governor, Governor Kemp, has a pretty wide open field here. He's polling, 20, 30 points plus ahead of his next closest opponent, probably avoiding a runoff. And if the writing wasn't already on the wall, the Kemp campaign is dumping more than $1 million into political ads in this final stretch. The Perdue campaign is spending $0 on the year. Joining me now, Blaine Alexander. Blaine, there is a lot to talk about in Georgia. Big headline, I think. Let's start with the governor's race there, the primary on the Republican side. Looks like a win, not just for Brian Kemp, but a loss for former President Donald Trump, who is not on the ballot, but the guy he endorsed is, and looks like he is headed for a loss. Again, we won't know till we know. What's interesting to me today is Governor Kemp said, hey, I'm not mad at Donald Trump. He's mad at me, but I'm not mad at him. And there's this interesting dynamic of voters in Georgia who simultaneously may like former President Trump, but may also like the guy he did not endorse, Brian Kemp.
And I have talked to a number of them, actually, Hallie, and they tell me that they voted for Trump before. They would vote for him again, most likely, but that's not enough to sway their support for Brian Kemp. He's very popular here in the state of Georgia among conservatives. And, you mentioned him saying that he doesn't have any interest in attacking the former president. That's really been his whole kind of move all along. He's really talked about the fact that he's running on his record. He's not running on 2020. Here are what a couple of candidates told me. Take a look. I'm told we don't have that sound, but I'll paraphrase it for you, Hallie. Essentially, they say that, they do not feel like they're swayed by the former president's words. In fact, they say that because he is attacking them, that makes them want to support him more because he's holding his ground and not doing something illegal, which the president wanted him to do in overturning the election, Hallie.
Tell me more about what you're hearing from voters, Blaine, as you're out talking with folks in these last few hours before they actually go and vote, if they haven't early voted already.
Well, I think that's the thing. Early voting has been astronomical. Like you said, you talked about the numbers. We have seen far more people vote than we saw back in 2018 and 2020. But for the people who I talked to who were voting and the people who are yet to vote, it's very clear that this race is an important one, not just on the Republican side because of these highly contested races on the Republican side, but on the Democratic side as well. Remember, Stacey Abrams is running. She's running unopposed. But I was at a heavily Democratic area, and I saw lines out the door in the sun for an hour just to cast their ballot for her. So in terms of people who are looking at this race and finding it to be very important, that is certainly high here. Take a look at what they had to say.
David wants fair elections, and Kemp didn't seem to want fair elections before. I mean, he shouldn't have done anything illegal. I mean, just legal means to help straighten out the election.
Did you support President Trump?
I did.
And does his criticism of the governor...
I don't like that.
Yeah.
I don't like it at all.
So, Hallie, that's just a sample of people that I talked to, both supporting the governor and supporting David Perdue. Now, I've got to say, you also see the difference in their campaign rallies. You know, Perdue held a rally, a press conference today. 2020 was, again, central focus, a big issue there. But when you talk to Brian Kemp, when you listen to him, he talks about his record. He talks about bills that he signed into law. He talks about being the first state to reopen after COVID. Several things he does not talk about: 2020, Donald Trump, and really he doesn't even talk about David Perdue until sometimes at the end, Hallie.
That's interesting. I wonder if he's talking even more about Stacey Abrams these days, Blaine, especially considering it looks as though, I mean, she's all but certain to be the Democratic pick for the governor's race. She would be his general election matchup if he's not already looking past tomorrow and looking to November.
You know what's interesting? If there is one thing that unites the two, Kemp and Perdue, it's their opposition to Stacey Abrams. That is the one thing that really does unite them. You kind of hear both of them really kind of going to bat over who is going to be the one that's more likely to beat her in November. In fact, when you go back to the first debate between the two, her name came up some 19, 20 times, and she wasn't even on the stage. So it's very clear that both of them have kind of used her as a rallying cry, saying that we are the more likely person to beat her in November. Meanwhile, Stacey Abrams is running unopposed. She has been running unopposed this whole time. By the end of tomorrow night, she will officially be the Democratic nominee, and I understand that that's when her campaign is going to shift into a completely different gear. Hallie.
Blaine Alexander, thank you so much. We're going to have a lot more to talk about with Blaine when we are on the road tomorrow for a very special edition of this show, Primary Day, right here on NBC News Now. We'll see you live from Georgia tomorrow night. Still ahead on this show tonight, police say a cyclist in Texas may have been killed because of a love triangle. And now the U.S. Marshals are getting involved with the search for the killer. We're going to tell you why coming up. Plus, a couple of thieves getting quite the surprise when they tried to rob a jewelry store. How the employees fought back. Next. Oh, look at that. More of that in the local. NBC covers hundreds of stories every day, and because you couldn't possibly read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. From our New York bureau, police in New York are looking for the person who shot and killed somebody on the subway. Witnesses say the suspect was a man who kept pacing back and forth before firing at the victim. Authorities are calling this whole thing unprovoked. NYPD ID'd a person of interest, but they're still trying to figure out the motive here. From our West Coast bureau, Huntington Beach jewelry store employees, can you look at this video for 1 second? They fought back during a smash and grab robbery. Man, you see the 4 suspects in hoods coming into the store. They smashed the glass. Look at this. It looks like the one person in a ponytail is literally kicking and punching them out of the door. It worked. They got him out. They got out empty-handed at that point. Wow. Gotta be careful. Stuff like that. Also from our West Coast bureau, 6 people were hurt when a bull escaped from a rodeo in Northern California, I should say. Here's some more wild video. Look at that. The bull straight up jumps the fence, runs through the crowd, goes to a parking lot, gets half a mile away before it's finally caught. 6 people were hurt, but only minor injuries, at least. In Texas today, the family of an elite cyclist who was shot and killed over an alleged love triangle says her death was senseless, as officials are on this nationwide manhunt for a suspect in the killing. In a statement to NBC News, the family says they're devastated, that no words can express the pain that they're feeling by the loss of 25-year-old Anna Mariah Wilson, known as Mo. You're going to see Wilson on your screen here in a second. A friend of hers found her body at a house in Austin on May 11th. Police say Wilson was shot multiple times in what did not look like a random act. Now, the U.S. Marshals Service is looking for this woman, Caitlin Marie Armstrong, who's suspected of killing Wilson, according to an affidavit obtained by our NBC affiliate in Austin. Wilson and Armstrong were dating the same guy at the same time, which one unnamed friend who talked to police said made Armstrong furious. Morgan Chesky is joining us now. And Morgan, it wasn't long after Wilson was killed that Armstrong was in custody on something else entirely, unrelated warrant. She was let go after police questioned her, and now she's the one they're looking for?
Yeah, Hallie, she is the one that U.S. Marshals are now searching coast to coast for. Caitlin Armstrong, that 35-year-old murder suspect in this case. And you mentioned one of the strangest twists of all here, Hallie, and that is in the days following this crime, police did take Armstrong into custody on that unrelated warrant, but they did question her about this crime at this time, according to an affidavit, when they presented her with video evidence of her vehicle, or a vehicle looking very similar to one in video footage just outside where this crime took place. Armstrong essentially agreed with officers that it didn't look good, but she offered no explanation as to why her vehicle would have been there. The affidavit also said she appeared quiet and very still and guarded during this questioning, but because that warrant that they initially brought her in on was not valid, police told Armstrong she was free to go. And then she did, and now here we are. Police say that they do believe she is on the run, and they're currently trying to track her down. Hallie?
In their statement to NBC News, Wilson's family says she wasn't dating anybody, but an arrest affidavit tells a different story. What do we know about, what happened here in this so-called triangle?
Well, we have heard from Colin Strickland. He is the one man that both of these women have dated, at least at some point. He says that he's been dating Armstrong for the past 3 years or so. The two of them lived together. However, there was a period that Strickland said was a couple weeks last fall in which he did date Wilson, a fellow pro cyclist, as was Strickland. He said that was in the fall. That romantic relationship ended. And he said following that, the two were strictly platonic and just friends. However, Hallie, if you look in this affidavit, Strickland did admit to police that when he continued to communicate with Wilson, he had to lie to his current girlfriend, Armstrong, and even change Wilson's name in his phone to avoid any issues with Armstrong, who is, of course, the prime suspect in this murder case. Strickland said that he dropped Wilson off at the home that she was staying at in Austin for an upcoming race after taking her out to go swimming and dinner back on May 11th. And this is disturbing. They looked at surveillance footage right after he dropped her off, and it was just about 1 minute later that a vehicle looking nearly identical, if not the identical vehicle belonging to Caitlin Armstrong, pulled up outside. And it was within about an hour, Hallie, that police found her inside that home where she was fatally shot.
So what is the next piece of the investigation from here, Morgan? Is it just a matter of the U.S. Marshals tracking down this woman?
They're certainly trying to do that. That's what appears to be the main priority at this point in time. Okay. Authorities are clear to say they do not believe Strickland is a suspect here. Hallie?
Morgan Chesky, live for us there in Texas. Morgan, thank you. Coming up here on the show, Bill Cosby facing another trial. We'll tell you about the first civil suit against him to go in front of a judge and jury right after the break. Amber Heard's lawyers deciding not to call Johnny Depp to the stand after saying this weekend they might want to question him in his defamation suit against Heard. Sources close to Heard's team tell NBC Today that Depp's testimony would be, quote, as irrelevant to us as a bicycle to a fish, adding that everything Depp has testified to so far has been irrelevant. We still might see him back on the witness stand later this week if Depp's team decides to call him back up as a witness in their rebuttal. We're in the final week of this trial now, which started more than a month ago. And today we heard some expert testimony from witnesses like a psychiatrist, an orthopedic surgeon, and an entertainment industry consultant. Closing arguments set to start Friday. Jury selection kicking off today in an L.A. courtroom in a civil trial for Bill Cosby on accusations from Judy Huff, a woman who says he sexually assaulted her when she was a teenager. This is the first case to head to court since his criminal conviction was overturned last year, which, look, remember this? Freed him from prison. He came home. Video cameras were there. This trial is expected to last 2 weeks, and Huff, who's seeking damages from Cosby, is expected to testify. As for Cosby, he has pleaded the fifth. We won't be hearing from him. His lawyer also says he's not even going to attend the trial. According to court documents, Huff met Cosby when she was a teenager. Days later, she says she went to Cosby's tennis club with a friend where he gave them alcohol before taking them to the Playboy Mansion. And here she says he assaulted her. Cosby has denied this account since the case was first filed back in 2014. Danny Savalos joins us now. So, Danny, this is the first civil case to go to trial. Cosby has settled the other ones against him. Lay out to you what stands out here.
What stands out is that this is actually a civil sexual assault case that is going to trial. California recently amended its statute of limitations to allow for somebody whose memory has been repressed to avoid the statute of limitations, or at least pause it until they remember it. So this was always a close call to be brought within that definition of an exception to the statute of limitations. But what stands out is that this is a case that hinges on facts nearly 50 years ago. 1974 are the supposed allegations. And even since those allegations, the plaintiff has officially said, oops, I may have gotten some of those dates wrong, possibly even a year wrong. So this is going to be a very challenging case for the plaintiff to meet her burden, but at the same time, difficult for Bill Cosby, his side, to prove where and when he was in 1974. Imagine trying to prove where you were in 1994.
Right. With this criminal case overturned, you might imagine that some of the women who accuse Cosby of being a sexual predator are going to be watching this one pretty closely. Some have said this may be their last stand for justice. Talk about the larger significance this trial may have.
This may be really one of the only times that Bill Cosby is brought before a civil trial for what he's alleged to have done. For the most part, there's almost 0.0 chance of any criminal liability at this point. The statutes of limitations have all expired, even with the newer expanded statutes of limitations, and civil statutes of limitations are even shorter. So it's really amazing that there are even any civil cases remaining against Bill Cosby based on allegations, especially dating back nearly 50 years. So this is a very important test of why we have statute of limitations in sex assault cases and why we toll them, why we extend them. And I think the awkwardness of the evidence here, being almost 50 years old, may go to either explaining why we have statutes in sex assault cases or make the case for eliminating them altogether and bringing in all evidence, however old.
Danny Savalos, thank you so much for that. We're going to be keeping our eye on how that unfolds, too. Appreciate it. That does it for us for this hour. Good to have you with us, as always. And we'll see you tomorrow when, again, we'll be on the road in Atlanta for Georgia's primary elections. I'm getting ready to go pack, but I'll see you from there. More coverage picking up right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.